Hi, Zizaran here with another video, a review video of the entire 2020, each league that we went through, what I didn't like, what I did like. 2020 has been one hell of a year, and thank you all for being part of it. Insane amount of new people on YouTube. Hope you guys are enjoying the video, and big thank you to my editor, Skria, who's been doing an amazing job in just yeah, making me look good. So, wide people happy. Thank you so much. We're going to start with Metamorph. Started in 2019, but you know what? Most of it was in 2020, so it counts as a 2020 league. So, the launch was pretty rocky. I feel like server-wise, GGG have like really nailed all of their launches lately. I can't think of like, not that I remember at least, that like the servers went down much. I feel like the queues are really fast. And it ends up being more like game engine problems or balance issues. Ends up for like nearly all of the leagues. But servers, credit given where credit due, the servers are amazing. I feel like so many games really struggle with launch days. You end up seeing like a massive queue of like hours and hours. Path of Exile queues, boom, you're in. And honestly, the entire queue goes away after like, what, 20 minutes? 15 minutes? It's usually pretty stable. So I've been very impressed with that. But yeah, Metamorph. It was, we had the insanely tanky Metamorphs. We had so many one-shots, so many things you couldn't see. You have the Agony Crawlers, you have the Blobs, you have the like 6 different barrages, and some of them could kill you even if the other mods weren't dangerous. Obviously, there were like people just clicking left on everything, like the max reward, and then just adding like quick, powerful crits, quick. And then obviously that one shots. But even there were some things like Blood Barrage, Horror Barrage that were just insane. I think for me, Metamorph, that period of Path of Exile, because Metamorph was also a big expansion where the Conquerors came in. We had Cyrus, we had a big event. It was probably my favorite Path of Exile time in the last 2 years. Not so much because of the league, and the league was actually fairly doable on hardcore too because of things like Val Molten Shell. That's the league in the last 2 years that I've played the most off stream. I would do like 14, 16 hour streams and then play like 3 or 4 hours off stream and just be having a great time. And I feel like they balance really well. Like they do really well whenever they have like an expansion they feel is really strong. They sometimes do a league that isn't necessarily the best. Like I don't feel like Metamorph should have gone core, but it's not the best league in my opinion. But combined, it was a really good fit. I think it was very, very balanced. Like, so that period of Metamorph was probably when I enjoyed PoE the most lately. Very, very enjoyable. I think it's a really cool mechanic that they should expand on. I think this is a mechanic that really deserves being expanded on if it's gonna stay core, especially. I really like the whole idea of like, you know, you get to choose exactly, for the most part, the risk versus reward. It was actually something I almost forgot to talk about, the insanity of picking up organs at the start of the league. I think I suppressed that the fact that that even went live is beyond me. Like actually beyond me. That's insane to me. Literally insane. Because everyone after like 30 seconds were like, really? We're gonna pick these up in every area? That's not feasible. A thing I dislike about it is that it had the same generic rewards that most leagues do lately. That's probably what I dislike the most. I feel like Path of Exile needs to do a lot more target farming. I feel like things need to have more target farming. With every league should have its own very specific thing. For example, Heist being a great one, where they have so many specific things that they don't need all the generic rewards they have there. That's the most important thing for me. I don't think it should have gone core. I don't think it adds a lot. I don't think it's balanced well. And I think if it should have gone core, it needed to include some way of making super bosses. I think this would have been the perfect time for Path of Exile to do like, I am going to take the essence of Uber Elder, Shaper, and Uber Adziri, and Cyrus, and, you know, maybe there's 3 or 4 new bosses in the future, and I'm going to make a super boss. That maybe it just takes a few moves from each boss, and then just makes... That's what I thought the entire endgame of the league would be. And then you can have, like, certain rewards that if you hit a difficult enough threshold, maybe you need at least Uber Adziri and Cyrus to drop this one really cool, unique item. That, for me, is what it should have had for it to go core. All in all, a pretty great league and an enjoyable time in Path of Exile, but I don't think it should have gone core. I enjoyed Metamorph. Maybe a 9 out of 10, but I think I've explained it appropriately that it wasn't just because of the league. Delirium. This is a hard subject for me to talk about because for my systems, for my computer, Delirium was so bad that I had to get a streaming PC just for this league. I tried it on 3 different PCs, and I had like so many friends. There were people that didn't have the issues that I did, but I had 3 different systems. I did clean reinstalls, everything. Could not get Delirium working. It was terrible. The first week, oh my god, the performance was horrendous. I could barely play. It was a very, very unenjoyable time. I think it's the league I've played the least ever of Path of Exile. And that was only performance. Like, the servers were good. Not everybody had performance issues. A lot of systems did. That being said, I think Delirium is probably the best league mechanic they have put in the game in the last 3 years. There's a lot of things I dislike about it as well, but let's cover everything I like about it. The engagement mechanic for how you do like access the mechanic, stroke of genius. Actually, best mechanic they've ever added. The way you run through it, you're in the mechanic now. I think it was, especially initially, a really, really cool way of scaling it. The monsters got very, very hard the further you went in. It was hard for even my builds to get like keep a Delirium all the way until the end, and I think that was a really, really good concept that they should have stuck with. Just making it more harder, more rewarding the further in you go. I feel Delirium really needed its own rewards, which I don't think it had. It was a very, very rewarding mechanic, right? You got currency, you got everything from Delirium. But that takes so much away from every other mechanic, and I think that I've complained about so much, right? That's what I want. I want target farming. So Delirium's rewards, it's the antithesis. I think that's the correct word. It sounds good anyway. It's like the opposite of what I want for the game. It's just giving you a lot of rewards, but it is a bad type of rewards. I really want them to focus on things having their own reward, or at least segmenting it into groups. Like, the best place to get incursion gear should probably be incursion. The best place to get breach gear should probably be breach. And I also feel like they took a lot of the speciality of fossils out of the game, which is bad, but also fossils should be the best. Delve should be the best place to get fossils. This is very important, in my opinion. And I'm probably never going to stop talking about that. And other things I dislike about Delirium, gray on gray was not a good color choice. I think what happened here is like Path of Exile is like, I keep seeing threads from colorblind people on Reddit saying that it's hard to play Path of Exile when you're colorblind. I see people saying, oh, I'm like red-green colorblind. Malachi is a nightmare. I don't know what it's like to be colorblind, but I see a lot of these threads and people complaining. And I think TGG saw this and I was like, you know what? We're going to make it equal for everybody. Gray on gray, nobody can see shit. That's what I think happened here. I think they were just fed up of like people complaining about different things. So they went with gray on gray. So that just doesn't matter if you're colorblind, doesn't matter if you have like bad seeing. You're screwed no matter what here. Another thing that I really didn't like was how punishing it was to backtrack. I am not a big fan of that kind of undeath effects. I think they've done it really well with a few things, like volatiles, amazing. Bearers, amazing. Even the little lightning shitters that do way too much damage, they're also amazing. The like instant explosions that you have 0.3 seconds to react to on new content that you're not used to yet. Very, very hard. They're kind of insane. There were also so much damage in the start, and they have addressed this. They've said that they don't feel like they have other ways to kill us than to do undeath mechanics. I don't think that's correct. I feel like they already did kill us in Delirium just by having the very high risk reward. The fact that you went so far into Delirium that like, well, you have a really nice build. That's too bad. Monsters have like 1,000 life now. I think that was a really, really good scaling. It was genuinely hard, and then it should have been X rewarding fairly deep in. Then you like reward people for taking the risk and going far in, and you need to be really tanky. You can't just glass cannon either. Like, a lot of those monsters were fairly dangerous while alive. And I think, and, you know, keeping them alive with increased HP was the important part here. So that's sort of some changes I would have liked in Delirium. And again, I don't like how it just shits out so many rewards and takes away from other League mechanics. It did have some of its own, like, it has like cluster jewels. They're really cool. I think it needed 1 additional element, and I think it only has like 5 to 10 unique items or something. Should it have gone core? Absolutely. I personally hated this league, and again, when I say that, I don't just mean the league itself. Like, I loved the league. I think it's such a great idea, and with some more improvements, I think it's going to be the best addition to the game since Delve. However, I had such a miserable time just because of performance issues that it sort of like tainted my entire experience with it, and that made it really hard for me. But honestly, Delirium is an amazing mechanic, should definitely have gone core, but it does need to be retuned a bit in my opinion. I would give Delirium, with everything I've said, I would give it a 5 or a 6 out of 10, especially for like enjoyment and stuff. Harvest League. Harvest was... I think that was a pretty smooth launch. I can't remember anything being bad about the launch. I don't think I had performance issues. I don't think I had any issues. I'm trying to think, but like... I mean, there wasn't that much that could have gone wrong in Harvest, I guess. I think this was probably the best launch in a long time. Servers were good. Can't remember there being any huge performance issues that I personally had. So like, very enjoyable start for me. I also didn't have many problems with I thought it was quite okay that you had to make your own garden. I do think it was a bit insane, and I feel like they should have catered more to their regular player here, because most players are never gonna want to or enjoy making the garden, right? You should have that as a template, similar to hideouts. That like, okay, you need to buy these things and it'll like start filling up your garden as you buy things. They should have let people just do a template, because the players that are going to enjoy sitting there min-maxing or designing their own garden, they're probably less than 10%, probably even less than 5% of the player base. And I think that was a very, very bad thing for a lot of people. I didn't particularly mind. I also think that it was just like a crafting test. The garden was incredibly boring, like the way we interacted with them. I think you probably should have at least have to fight the monsters twice. Maybe like some minions that were defending the seeds or something, but it was so boring for me just clicking on the seeds and then picking them up. Like, that was incredibly boring, and I think that took a lot away from the game. Like, balance-wise, there were like 2 monsters. Most of them were way too weak. Way too weak. And then there were 2 that were just insane. There's something they do in Path of Exile where they keep making this mistake, and I'll call it the Devourer mistake. Because that's like the first mob I can think of that I had, like where Devourers would attack as a pack of 15 and they would all attack at the exact same split second. And this keeps happening. The amount of monsters that keep just like, you know, lining up like a fucking shooting squad, and they all like attack in unison. Like, that is insane in Path of Exile with aura stacking and the way those things work. We saw it again in Heist, and just insane. It was a little bit too OP, and I thought it was amazing as a league. I don't think it should go core anywhere near as what it is. Like, it needs to be watered down, and I think most leagues should. I think it's kind of important that every league really shines and is really strong. I don't know what other word to use for it, but very like flavorful and strong when the league is out. And then when you make it core, you water it down a bit. You can water it down over time. Maybe not as much as Breach. Breach kind of... Well, maybe that's what they should do. They should water it out over time and then remove it from the game. Like Breach right now, you could take it out of the game and I wouldn't miss much. Obviously, the items and stuff are great. I'm just meaning, like, I don't get excited when opening a Breach anymore. Because, you know, it's a shadow of its former glory. And Harvest as well was so insanely powerful. It was basically... design an item in Path of Building, Control C, Control V. Cool, I have it in the game now. And I think that is completely okay for the league, right? Because the magic of Path of Exile is that we have the league system where it's a fresh, it's a wipe every 3 months it's a launch. Nothing that we did in those 3 months matter for the next league. So they can really YOLO it and just experience like really cool things. And that is beautiful. I think that's amazing and a really cool thing about Path of Exile. Um and I really enjoyed it. I was a little worried that I would get too bored, too bored with having like, especially as a player that invests so much time into it. I thought I would like, well, I have like 6 perfect characters now. What do I do? Like, do to make more perfect characters? Well, yeah, it turns out that is what I do. It let me have a lot more diversity in the builds. I got to try out like an in-stacking power siphon on solo self-fan, which is hard on Trade League normally, but now I got to do it on solo self-fan because of how strong Harvest was. That was incredibly fun. And there were some like quality of life things like switching resists, some of the fragment stuff. Some of it was really cool for racing. In fact, the more I talk about it, the more I realize how many cool things Harvest have that like really should and needs to go core. There's so many amazing things like the fragment switching, the gambling on the divination card. They should probably, by the way, make that rarer so you have worse odds, but keep it back in the game in some form. I think that was the most, probably the single most entertaining thing of 2020 was the doubling div card. I think now especially, and I'm very heavily biased here, but especially with the new prediction system on Twitch, would be extremely good content. It's like double, yes. The odds were way too good, but definitely want that back in the game. But let's talk a little bit about dislikes as well, especially if it's going core. It was way too easy to interact with influence gear. I think they should just have their own thing. I don't think any influence stuff should be tagged in any other way. If Harvest, it depends on how they want Harvest to go core, but Tailwind can't be something you just like pop on your boots, right? Or the Crusader Explosion Chest can't be something you pop on. That should probably just be influence. It should probably not be physical and influence, right? Because that was way too strong. I think target adding is fine. I think target removing was stupid. I feel if you have to take the massive risk of an annulment orb, I think it's fine. That's a huge risk. If you have the balls to do a 1 in 6 gamble or a 1 in 4 gamble to remove the thing you want, you deserve to get a really good item. But being able to just, with zero risk, do it over and over again, I think that's too powerful. Maybe if they add something similar to Last Epoch, where there is stability and an item breaks after a certain amount of time. Like, you know, if you've removed fire and added fire 600 times, there probably should have been a few times in there where your item had a chance to break, right? I don't think it's necessarily healthy for the core of the game that you could perfect items for all time. And I don't know how they're adding Harvest, but that's how I feel. I feel like the remove none and add and remove an add were too strong. Oh, and just the removes. The ads are really cool and so many other things. Really big quality of life. Very excited about Harvest coming back. I personally wanted them to put it in Delve, was my suggestion, as some sort of like city or like harvest patch that you encounter and that you just have a bunch of crafts there. I think growing them was insanely boring. I think picking them up was insanely boring. And I'm really looking forward to seeing and hopefully pogchamping how they've put it core. Because I hope they've made it like a more interesting mechanic. It should absolutely go core. I think a way of actually crafting in Path of Exile and not just gambling, not everything being pure RNG. I think that was pretty nice. I think it's pretty important. I'm very much looking forward to it. And yeah, it was a fairly enjoyable time in Path of Exile as well. Ushabi, kind of boring boss, and very, very few voice lines. They kept repeating. The boss was okay, I guess. They could have made it a little bit harder, but either way, it was okay. Some of the items were okay. Actually, weren't most of the items boring? But either way, I really enjoyed it. I gotta give Harvest a 7 or 8 out of 10 for enjoyment. For like the amount that I enjoyed that period in Path of Exile and everything. It was very, very enjoyable. Maybe even a 9. It might be just as good as Metamorph for me. Both Metamorph and Harvest, just really enjoyable periods for me. Played a lot off stream. And let's talk about the Harvest event, the Racing Gauntlet. This was the first time that we ran this as an event. We'd obviously like played around with it as private leagues before with all the damage mods. And then we took inspiration from like China did an event, like the China servers did an event like this. And we wanted to do something more. The harvest crafting made it perfect for racing. We made it 2 days shorter than the next one we did, because we figured, you know, with harvest you can do it so much easier. And yeah, it was very, very thoroughly enjoyable. A gauntlet is a event we do. We're gonna try to do one every league, ideally, but it's an event we do. Big prize pool that is community funded, and the one we did in Heist was actually doubled by Shopify. And yeah, it's a big community event where all the damage mods in a private league is on. So it's a very, very difficult event, and yeah, very fun, really cool, really enjoy it. This is the roughest one for me. This was the worst launch ever. And this time not so much in performance issues like Delirium, which is arguably more frustrating. But I remember there was just it felt so untested. Like there were so many things that went wrong. Things were like just going wrong everywhere. People were getting stuck. You were crashing. There were rollbacks. And on hardcore, it was a disaster. It was a disaster. Like the amount of things that weren't tested, the amount of things that one-shot you. There were like those circles on the ground in the bunker did like 5 or 10k damage and were almost invisible. The robot things in tunnel repository like exploded in like 0.8 or 0.7 seconds and did 4k per little one, and they stacked in tens. It's been balanced better now, but it is a weird choice for me because they know how much the community has generally been very vocal about Doris is the #1 thing they hate. They got so much positivity and incursion for having doors that automatically open when we ran near them. And we were hoping for a long time that this would go to the rest of the game, and people were joking, now the technology just isn't there yet. It's only in the Val past. It's not in the future. And now we're getting doors that we literally have to get people to help us with. We can kill gods, but this door is where we really need a helping hand here. It was door upon door, you know. It was a little too on the nose, a little too much. There was just so much in Heist at the start that went wrong. The amount of bugs and exploits. There were 2 bugs. There were 2 really bad bugs. One got fixed after 3 days. One got fixed after a week and a half. And I can't remember which, but it took way too long. Fated connections would not be used. If you were standing inside the Heist area with the prophecy and spamming jewelers on an item, every time it would just 6-link. It might take 300, it might take 50, it might take 10 jewelers, but every time it hit 6 sockets, it would 6-link and it would not consume your fated connections. Some of you in Trade League might have been wondering why 6-links were cheap for so long, especially on so many items. Well, that was probably a large part of the reason. Another bug was every time you did a Temple of Atsuotl with the wealth room at level 3, you would be guaranteed a mirror shard. These also did not get removed from players that were exploiting this. So, because I had several friends that got at least 4 to 10. Some people that skipped Heist during the campaign just couldn't interact with Heist. They just got locked out of it. Sometimes people will get locked out on their second character. And then once I got to maps, and I was like, okay, well now I'll slowly gear up in tier 1s and do some heists to gear up. I couldn't do Heist. I just couldn't do it anymore. I did I can't remember if it was like 7 or 10 or 11, but they all crashed in a row. I wasn't able to finish a single one. So like whatever on the last one I did, I was like, I just have to skip Heist. Then I would try like a day later, like, nope, still crashing. So I gave up on Heist. But Heist, as all the other leagues, was no different. It does get fixed over time. They improved it a lot. They worked on it steadily and kept fixing things. Like they changed how the alarm bar works. They changed a lot of the crashes. And Heist started shaping up to be a really good league. At some point, I actually enjoyed it a large amount, but it got very stale very quickly, exactly like Incursion, because it didn't have the same replayability value. That being said, I really like Heist. I think it adds a lot of really cool flavor to the game. Um, the voice lines and everything like that, the art, the all like the lore shit, that stuff is actually really cool. It's really well done. They've done really well with Heist. It's a really cool part of the game. Aside from like the door on door on door and how tedious and slow it is, it's also like probably the coolest rewarding league they've ever done, that I'm very surprised that they made it so insanely diffused. And by that I mean this has the same thing as Delirium, where it's shitting out breachstones, it's shitting out talismans and incursion. Actually, talismans is fine because this could be, you know, where you farm talismans, right? And talismans are exciting now after the change that they have an anointment. Why would you possibly do breach when you're just dropping loads of pure Cherulas, pure Ash, and stuff like that in a heist? And like, why would you even consider doing incursion when you're just like raining incursion armors and all the things they want from there? But the specialized loot, the replicas, the alternate gems, the smart loot. I can't even. We'll talk about smart loot in a second. They did so many amazing and really cool things here that I'm very surprised that they had all this like diffuse, like throw loot at them. And the XP was a bit too insane once they fixed that. Obviously, initially there was no XP. Then at the end, now it's like the best XP per hour in the game, and like tunnels and repository with doing the, you know, the tunnel or repository run. The alternate gems is one of the coolest things to ever come to Path of Exile. The orbs that like switched the gems as well, really cool. One of the best ideas I've ever seen. It gives, that alone is like very similar to like cluster jewels, right? I mean, cluster jewels are huge, but you get the idea, right? It's a very cool like league reward. Smart loot is that the items roll better. They make more sense. I found so many like rings and amulets and stuff that were just rolled really well. They would have like 90 life, triple res or something. Like they were smart, right? The gear made sense. Like the stats made sense with each other, and that was extremely cool. And I'm glad they're experimenting with it. I would like smart loot for the core of the game. I would want to see like 95% loot cut, which would, you know, even base types would be kind of interesting. Like, oh, I found a Valax. That is what I need. I haven't found a Valax today. Maybe. I personally think there's a lot of value in like scarcity, because right now, I think the fact that a Path of Exile is unplayable without a loot filter is bad. I think loot filters are fine. They're a great invention and make a lot of sense for like, you know, you evolve and change as a player. Sometimes you just, okay, well, I'm not going to pick this up anymore. I don't need it anymore. The fact that Path of Exile is literally unplayable without a loot filter probably isn't a good thing. So I would love to see more of the game getting a lighter form of smart loot. It's like, oh, I found some rare gloves. There's a really decent chance they're going to be good, right? And like there should be some excitement in finding items. What I dislike about Heist, it's way too tedious. It's way too tedious. There's just it's so slow. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't have good game feel. There's one of them, one of the heists don't have doors on the way out. That feels okay. There's like 2 or 3 doors on the way in and then none on the way out. Probably could have been the other way, but I don't know. They've made that part feel really bad. They've made the mercenaries that we use feel really bad. I feel like there needs to be a different way with like gear. Either no levels or no gear, but it needs to be different, and it just doesn't feel good. Heist in general just doesn't feel good. It gets very tedious. Should it go core? Not in its current state. I don't have a doubt in my mind that it's going to go core. I can't remember if they've addressed it yet, but it's obviously going core. They've put so much work into it. It has very high retention as well. And they've put so much work into it. The voice acting, everything is great, and it could be a really nice alternative to maps. I think it needs a lot of rework. It needs to be a lot less tedium. I give it currently a 5 out of 10 for me personally. Just because it's just it's a chewy league. Do a quick recap as well of the Heist event. We did a Awakener kill event with Shopify, which was really cool. I did $10,000. Shopify did $30,000, and we had a really cool race for the Awakener. And I think it's really, really interesting to have events like that in the league. We get to see how like the league impacts the racing. It was obviously a very big change from Harvest. And yeah, I think it went really well. Um, I'm more keen on doing race events for bosses that are like new and stuff. Like the Awakener race, the first time it came out was definitely smoother and more interesting because everything was new and fresh. Um, but I learned a lot from it, and like I think it was a very successful event. People really enjoyed it, and right after that, Shopify was like, "Well, let's do more." And then we did the Racing Gauntlet, where they doubled the prize pool. Um, so everything that the community raced, they matched 1-to-1, and the Heist Racing Gauntlet was just so much better in general. We learned so much and improved so much with like we had bounties, we had so many more things that even if you weren't necessarily a racer or you had time to like play loads of hours a day, which generally the Gauntlet encourages you not to because it's so rippy that most people were doing less than 16 hours a day, even less than 14, and we saw a lot of people being competitive with even 8. So that was really cool to see because since it is so dangerous, if you don't die in that league, you're doing pretty well. And loads of community bounties. Saw so many people that have never tried racing before really enjoy it, and we filled up at 10,000 people and cycled people out. So we probably had something like 13 to 15,000 people play. It was just an insane amount of people, a lot of community engagement, and yeah, we had an actual IRL trophy that yeah, Darky posted it on Twitter. He's the one who won. It was awesome. Went really well, and we have more trophies ordered thanks to Shopify. So there will be more gauntlets. So yeah, I'm excited. But just wanted to make this video talking a little bit about 2020, how everything went. We'll make a new one for 21, obviously. And I hope you guys had an okay year, even though obviously it was a fairly rough year for everybody. And here's to hoping 2021 is easier. And let's hope we get a lot of good content, a lot of cool stuff. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Thank you so much if you watched the entire video. And yeah, sub if you like the content. Thanks for watching. Try to die less than I do.